think that's us. So I am Suzanne Vanhooymissen, I'm with CIR, and I have the privilege to welcome you all to the first Open Source Film Awards. And it's all about these little trophies, which you can see is a little goat on a laptop. Goat, greatest of all times, of digital investigations. So that's where that came from. I want to kick off the session with some short housekeeping before I hand over to Ross and Ben. As you all know, this is a 50-minute session, which is actually really quite short for everything we want to get through. So we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to speak. So I'm asking all the participants to really stick to their 3 minutes that we asked them to prepare. But we want to give everybody a chance to showcase everything that they've done. So we also want to say that at the end, we'll take some photographs with the finalists. So if everybody would like to stick around, but not kind of hang around too long during the session because of the time, right? And then after all of this is done, because it's going to be quick and happy, we then have a networking event at 6:30 at, where, sorry? La Rosetta, yeah, and we'll have the details on the screen again. So I will happily introduce the co-founder from CIR, that is my boss, Ross Burley.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the inaugural, the first ever Open Source Film Awards. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the International Journalism Festival and Chris and all of the staff for this brilliant opportunity. Thank you so much. You've made us feel incredibly welcome, and it's brilliant to be here. So I'm Ross. I'm the co-founder of the Center for Information Resilience. For those of you unfamiliar with us, we're a non-profit based in London, international in character and focus. We use digital investigations and open source techniques to expose disinformation, war crimes, and human rights abuses. When we started CIR, in the midst of the pandemic, I had two aims. The first was to get policymakers to recognize the scale of the challenges around disinformation, influence operations, and hybrid warfare. And the second was to build a collaborative, supportive community. Journalists and academics, filmmakers and public servants, civil society actors, investigators, all working together to tackle a common problem. And whether it's a regime thousands of miles away committing war crimes or a political actor closer to home trying to subvert democracy or use this information to achieve power, no one organization or individual can act alone to counter wrongdoings. It takes a community to stand together. As a relative newbie to open source back in 2020, I've been awed by the collaborative, supportive spirit of the open source community. Journalists, hobbyists, and pros alike. It really is completely unique. Working together in this brilliant community, we have at our disposal incredibly powerful tools. Geolocation, chronolocation, unencrypted communications, CCTV, satellite analysis, dozens of other tools and resources which are open to everybody to use. The power of open source is in the name. It's open. Our work is transparent. If a regime rails against our investigation into a massacre, well, be our guest. Check our working. It's open. In a world of disinformation, our collective strength is in the existence of objective truths. While investigating wrongdoing can be done with open source, to expose it, to hold it to account, requires another skill, storytelling. The truth is muted without having the power to tell it. And yet again, the strength of our community is in the diversity of those within it and the brilliant range of skills they bring. While the written word can often powerfully convey the findings of a digital investigation, think of the flagship MH17 Bellingcat investigation and the achingly moving description of the field in which the plane came down, there is a certain special alchemy between open source and film. Films show and tell the power of open source. They feed our imagination and they build drama within investigations, bringing them alive for audiences across the world. It's there for all to see in our submissions, which I'm very, very proud of. I and the rest of our amazing jury have been staggered by the quality, commitment, power of the films submitted. They are a testament to both how journalism has embraced open source and how the wider community has taken inspiration from those storytellers to bring investigations to life. A common theme of the brilliant films submitted for the awards has been their ability to tell human stories. That despite the methodical, detailed investigative techniques deployed to expose the objective truths that I've spoken about, at their heart, these investigations are about people. People who've been trafficked, people who've been sexually abused, people who've been tortured, people who've lost those closest to them. It's their truth our filmmakers have exposed, and that's the real power of open source. Over to Ben. Thank you.
Great, thanks Ross. Ooh, that's very loud, woohoo. Hi everyone, so my name is Ben Strick. Just before we kick off, I just want to say that I'm super honoured to be standing up here today and talking about these stories around what is a mutual campfire that we're all kind of gathered around with our interests today. First up, a bit of a warning. I know I sound like a different Australian accent, so if some of you can't understand, please tell me if I'm talking too fast by raising your hand. But if you can't understand, please turn on the captions on the YouTube live stream and you can understand and watch that way. But I think the difference that I mentioned in my accent is also something amazing that we have in the open source community, right? Is that difference that brings everyone here today. It's international, it's collaborative, and it's also welcoming no matter where you are or who you are or what skills you have in life, right? It's quite an embracing community. As you can see, very different backgrounds on the screen just from the judges alone. This community, it's one that's been referred to a lot online as being like an online community, right? This friendly online open source community. But with social media spaces now at a bit of a threat this day and age, these events where we meet in person around this campfire and share stories are crucial. So Linda or Suze mentioned tonight that we have La Rosetta, which is a community event, right? You get the chance to meet some of those people that you might already follow on Twitter, but you've never actually met in person, so we can have an in-person community. Cool. So please do come to that event. Great, I'll stop the promotion. So before we get stuck into some of these awesome awards and awesome videos that we've got and stories to tell, first, I just wanted to kind of remind everyone of three things that we're here around today. It might set the mood for some of the stories today. First, it's a very sad reality that there are some big bullies destroying lives, homes, and communities around the world. But second, that there are brave people who stand up to those bullies, including many in this room. Our networks on the ground as well, and those people that film the footage that many of us rely upon, that you'll see in these stories as well. So a big hat tip to those people. But third, and I think one of the most important things that we've got here today, is the power that emerges from when we work together, this collaborative community. And here in this room, many of you are already standing up against bullies, right? But together we're even more a little bit powerful. And that's kind of what tonight is about. It's not only an awards ceremony, but it's celebrating the collaboration and the strengthening of that community at a crucial time when we're facing a lot of threats and discourse, so that we can keep exposing wrongdoing, calling out injustice, and holding those responsible to account. And you're going to see many of those examples in the stories that we see tonight. I think we'll start with this video showcasing some of the highlights from the short form entries that we're going to look at today.
Behind the hospital on October 29th, an explosion has just hit. The director of Al-Quds spoke to CNN that day, saying there was bombing all around us. On November 7th, the IDF published a video of them conducting a strike just 100 meters from the hospital entrance, here. They claim they were targeting a Hamas weapons depot.
And let's look again at the activity of the last 7 hours. It's all around one specific spot, indicating the migrant boat has barely changed position. Remember, all this time, Greece says the vessel is not in trouble and is safely on its way to Italy, and so no rescue is needed. It is at 11 p.m. that the boat sinks with hundreds on board, and there's a frenzy of ships coming to help.
Je vais enchaîner les contrats, frérot, je vais redescendre. Sur l'avion, on va dire, je me suis en train d'envoyer sur un contrat, je suis en train de rigoler.
Il est soupçonné des assassinats d'au moins 4 personnes dans plusieurs endroits de la ville, ici sur la carte. Il a été arrêté et mis en examen pour 3 de ses affaires. Selon ce message crypté que nous avons repéré, les tarifs d'un contrat seraient entre 7 000 et 35 000 euros selon le nombre de cibles.
Could I invite up someone from the CNN team to come and say a few words about their film?
Okay. Thank you so much, and I am just one of a large team of people that did this, so thank you so much for having us and for considering our piece in this. So we started looking into this in October. It became very quickly clear that this was an alarming trend that was happening in this war, attacks on medical facilities and also medical transportation as well. And so we started looking not just at specific incidents, but the scale of what was happening. We identified in this piece 20 out of 22 hospitals in northern Gaza had been already attacked at this point in the war. That has continued since that point. And what we found crucially is that all of the attacks, everything about it was being questioned online. The validity of it, the proportionality of it, whether or not it had happened, where it had happened, whether it happened directly or indirectly, and at the same time, there was a huge amount of open source evidence that could answer some of these questions, whether that was videos, satellite imagery, and also other kinds of imagery we found from the ground. And so we started piecing this together to identify the scale of these attacks, and then also look at how these attacks had unfolded, and crucially, one of the key elements we found was whether an attack was direct or indirect, and how that impacted the functioning of those hospitals. And that's why that model you saw earlier was so important, is that we found with Al-Quds, for example, a hospital in the middle of Gaza, it had been incapacitated over several weeks and weeks by a series of attacks. It hadn't yet directly hit the hospital, that would come later, but at that point it had been hit by a series of surrounding attacks that damaged the roads, damaged areas nearby that meant aid could not get in, people could not get out. And so it was looking through all of this evidence that we started to realize how these attacks had started to unfold, the pattern that they followed as well. And I think one of the last things we noticed is that as the investigation continued, the attacks intensified. And so this started to become a living record that we hoped would continue as the war went on, so that unfortunately, after we finished this piece, we saw, for example, with Al-Shifa Hospital, since then it has been completely destroyed. And so what this piece hopefully did, and what we intended to do, and we're very grateful it's being considered, it gave a snapshot of those 3 months of how these attacks continued, and potentially, hopefully, indicates any war crimes that may or may not have been committed. This is key documentation for that as well. So thank you so much for showing the piece.
Thanks, Katie. Could I have someone from the BBC team up and talk through their work?
Thanks very much. Hello, everyone. My name's Nick. Thanks to the organisers and for the judges, too. The story that we did, sadly, was on one of the worst migrant disasters in a decade in the Mediterranean Sea. It's feared up to 750 people may have lost their lives. And when we arrived in Kalamata the day after this happened, there was already this narrative that the Greek government had put forward, that this was an unavoidable tragedy. And this jarred because already we had survivors saying that there were missed opportunities to help people. And actually, in time, some survivors accused the Greek Coast Guard of actually causing their boat to sink. So that was what we found. It didn't feel right, so we tried to investigate. The most obvious thing we could have done, the first sort of open source avenue to explore, would have been if that boat had some sort of GPS tracker, but it didn't. So what happened was my colleague Kostas in the green there, he managed to get shipping data from marine traffic, which showed all the other boats in the Mediterranean Sea at this time. And so from that, we were able to build up this picture, and you got a glimpse of it there. And I remember the first time we saw it, it sent shivers down the spine because it looked like a tragedy unfolding in slow motion. You could see what was going to happen. So the other open source techniques that we looked at, we had our friends and colleagues in London at BBC Verify who were looking at video, authenticating it, using the techniques that so many people here know about, looking at the position of the sun, the shadows, time of day. Also, court documents were useful to us. So we managed to piece all of this together. We faced the age-old journalistic dilemma. Do we try and make this as good as it can possibly be? Do we try and talk to more people, or do we put it out there? And this was only 5 days after the sinking had happened, and we thought that in light of the narrative that had been set, it was really important that we did this. So we went with the graphics that we had. We could have completely revamped it, but we thought at this particular moment, we needed to get this story out here. And after that, there were a lot of extremely good investigations that friends and colleagues from across the world pursued. So I think what also we found was important was that the voice of the survivors was reflected in this, because a lot of people were saying this happened, and that sort of narrative was being overtaken by the official point of view. And I think that's why we put it out when we did and really tried to challenge that official version of events. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And the last nominee from France TV.
So I wrote this down because English is not my mother tongue, so I hope you will understand me. So hi everyone, and thank you very much for picking our piece, and especially a French one, so thank you very much. So I will first introduce my team, which is called the Revelators, and we are in charge of authenticating all amateur images of France Television network, which is kind of a huge job. And we launched this new format a few months ago, so it's very new. And it's broadcasted in the evening news bulletin of France 2. And for this format, we have a precise guideline, which is no on-screen interviews, no archives or agency images, and above all, no reporting on the field. The idea being to tell stories about places where we can no longer go, and Marseille is one of those places in some neighborhood, of course. So Thomas, here with me, is a breaking news reporter, and he was at the time covering all criminal activities in France and closely followed all the gangland killings in the city. And a few years ago, he went himself to La Paternelle, so he knew very well the neighborhood. And Jeremy, one of my co-workers, offered to co-construct a story with the breaking news reporter and an OSINT team aside. And of course, this place where it was clear we could no longer go anymore to report on. So we started to collect manually all the data on the narcomicide, which is a new word for Marseille. As you can understand, all the murders linked to the drug trafficking problem. And we, at the time, had reached an all-time high of 42 murders in the city. It had reached 50 at the end of the year, which is, a lot of killings linked to the drug problem. And these two gangs are not the only gangs in Marseille, of course, but they were the bloodiest in the city. So our main difficulties was to validate our hypothesis, and we had to reach out to many different kind of sources. And the goal was not to expose anyone, so we were really careful about that, but rather explain the system and why there were so many deaths in the city. I hope it shows and you get why it's happening, and those two gangs are a real problem in Marseille. And in March, I'm done. In March, 13 members of DZ and as well as Felix, the head of Yoda, were arrested. And he was actually in Morocco, where we found him in the first place, so we are glad. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to show our work. We are very grateful. Thank you.
Wow, so this is the hardest part about awards. Most fun part, but also the worst part. We have to say the winner. So there's obviously some amazing entries, right? Now we'd love to leave you and say everyone won, but we have to pick one. So obviously they were highly challenging to rank, and we used our judges to really have a vast field of experience in order to rank them as equally as possible, but there were some very good competitors in here. So the winning entry for this category showcased a broad array of digital investigative techniques that were essential in delivering a significant and impactful story. At the core of this narrative is an industry that has deeply affected a community. The investigative team invested countless hours into examining footage, messages, digital traces, which enabled them to document a brutal world that exists both online and offline. The story delves into the grim realities of gangs, drugs, and contract killers, posing considerable risks to the journalists involved. The team presented a visually appealing piece, utilising sophisticated mapping techniques, visual identification, and connections between networks of individuals. They explored an industry not only based in the south of France, but also with global trade connections. Each moment of the entry was engaging, presenting complex information clearly and accessibly through innovative open source visual display techniques. The winner of the CIR Open-Source Film Awards 2024 in the short form category is the two gangs involved in a bloody drug trafficking war in Marseille, France TV, France 24. Please come up.
I did not wrote anything down, but yeah, thank you very much. We are so grateful and so proud of this investigation. We did like a great collaboration between two teams, one traditional, one OSINT, and it made magic, I think. And it was a great chemistry between us, and I'm thanking all my team that is not here. I'm just yeah, all the team is here, so Thomas is here, but Jeremy, Marine, Clément, and the two editors, Emma and John, that made a great work as well. So thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, well done again. Okay, moving on to the next category is the mid-form. Again, same as before, we'll watch a short video with a snippet from each of the finalists, and then I'll invite each of the finalists up to say a couple of words about the film. So let's play the trailer.
Seconds later, he sexually abuses her. But it's not just this one video. There are thousands of them, all for sale online. This is a horrific business, making huge profits from sexual assaults targeting women across East Asia. BBCI takes you inside this dark world to find out who is behind it.
A demonstration against the construction of a large water reservoir turned into a violent clash between protesters and police. Sajdutai Ghaziani, a 32-year-old activist, was seriously injured. As of April 7th, the day this video was published, he was still in life-threatening condition.
This is a satellite image showing a Russian cargo ship, the Mikhail Neneshov, at a port in occupied Crimea loading Ukrainian grain. This is that same ship on video as it passes through the Bosphorus Strait in Istanbul, Turkey. And this is another satellite image showing the Neneshov at port in Iran, offloading the same grain.
Great. Could I have someone from the BBC come up and say a couple of words? Thank you.
Thank you. Patina. Hello, everybody. My name is Asher. This is Patina. It's a bit weird that we're here because I'm the motion designer on this project, and this is the editor. We don't usually get invited to these things. But it's good to be here. Unfortunately, the editorial team behind this couldn't be here, but that's very good for us, so here we are. Yeah, so this film, as you saw a snippet of it before, it investigates a network of shady websites that sell these videos, you saw some of them there, of sexual assault. Specifically, it's mostly sexual assault on public transportation, trains, and buses, mostly in China and Japan. It's so prevalent in these countries that it has a name, Chihan. And our colleagues spent a lot of time in this project trying to find out who was behind these videos and who's behind these websites that's disseminating them. They used a lot of different techniques to try and get there. There was secret filming and undercover reporting, a lot of due diligence, working in multiple jurisdictions and multiple languages. And a lot of the evidence that was compiled was taken from social media, Weibo, which is a website in China, these videos themselves, and down to things like classic investigative journalism, connecting dots, finding locations of specific stations by highlighting sections of images and things that we saw in these videos, infiltrating Telegram groups. All of this came together to, well, I'll let you watch the movie to see what happens in the end. But they do circle in on this shadowy figure, the pervert in question, who goes by the alias Uncle Shi. It's really unfortunate, though, that the editorial team couldn't be here, but I do speak, I think, on behalf of all of us when I say we're really grateful to be nominated among such an esteemed group of journalists as we see here, shedding light on a troubling, grim, grisly crime that thrives in the dark, and I think shedding light on it, as our colleagues did in this film, is the least we can do, and it's really courageous and brave, and we're really grateful to be nominated, so thank you.
Thank you very much. And colleagues from Le Monde.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I speak for all of my team who unfortunately couldn't come here today to say that we're so grateful for being nominated. I'm really here representing Arthur Carpentier, who was the lead investigator of this investigation. And this investigation is quite particular because it's one that was originally in French, in which we translated into English. And so it's a real collaboration between the French side of Le Monde and the English side of Le Monde. And also a collaboration between French journalists. This investigation, which looks at this huge water reservoir protest in Sainte-Soline in France. We collaborated with Libération and with Brut, a journalist from Brut, Camille Cossy, who was there on the ground. She gave us her footage and we were able to use her footage and the investigation from Libération to discover that this grenade that was fired and hit this protester, Serge Dutaï-Graziani, was in fact fired from where the gendarmerie were and not where the protesters were. And I think an important part of this investigation also was the motion designers, because there was so much that we couldn't show, and thanks to the motion designers using their incredible skills, we were able to detail the route of the grenade and show the curve in which it was fired, and that really strengthened our investigation and made what we were trying to prove so clear and visual for the audience. And it's an honor to be here, so thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And our third nominee from Script News.
Actually, that's actually something I wanted to emphasize, similar to what Ben and Ross were emphasizing, is that collaboration was really important for this piece, because it wasn't just Scripps News, it wasn't just Bellingcat. We had Ali working on the data side. We had Yorick Isik, who's in Istanbul, who did that shot of the boat going underneath the Bosphorus, and kind of working with him and Lloyd's List, who has access to AIS data or shipping data. We're able to kind of follow these ships and see which ones weren't actually showing up on the AIS data, mostly thanks to Ali, I think, who had a really brilliant way of organizing the data so that we could more easily sift through the thousands of ship-to-ship transfers that were going on in the Kerch Strait. And so I think that kind of collaborative work with all of these people kind of working together, and Scripps News also doing some of the shoe leather reporting as well, I think that's one way that open source reporting can really shine, where you're integrating both open source methodology, like tracking ship movements or looking at geolocations with satellite imagery, and actually talking to people on the ground as well. So that's kind of the stuff that I'm really happy about with this piece.
Yeah, I just want to tell an anecdote that I think like drives that point home, which is that we had to sift through a bunch of different types of data. We had like shipping registries, GPS location data for the ships. We had terabytes of satellite imagery, and we were combing through all of this stuff, and we were at a certain point just trying to figure out who owned this ship, this one right here. And the shipping registry data was weird, and it kept changing, and the AIS data didn't help, and I was trying to train a model to like identify it in satellite imagery. That wasn't working. And then ultimately what did it was Yuduk, our friend who took the pictures, getting like an almost meter-long lens and camping on the banks of the Bosphorus and zooming in so much onto the ship that you could read the jerseys like that the people were wearing on the ship. And we're like, oh, CMC Marine Contractors. That's what it said in the shipping registry. So yeah, I mean, we brought a lot of different methodologies to bear on this, like old school and new school, and yeah, it was just a blast to work on this with everyone involved.
Thank you very much, guys. And to present the Midform Awards, Simon Ostrovsky.
The story that won the award is one that bridges the gap between open source and traditional reporting really beautifully. It's excellent on both fronts when digging into open source online networks, open doors for the next level of undercover reporting. Neither could have managed to expose the depth and level of wrongdoing and ultimately the perpetrators behind it without the other. This story gives a voice to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of women who are the victims of sexual violence in East Asia and whose story has largely gone untold before. The team showed how some of the most basic open source investigation techniques, doing reverse image searches, scrolling through the endless social media pages, matching profiles with email addresses and PayPal accounts can achieve amazing results. They showcase the core strengths of open source investigations and just how much can be gleaned from connecting dots spread out online. This film achieved what few do. They managed to track down the bad guy and confront him. I love that part. Raising awareness of a long-standing issue, powerfully illustrated through interviews with victims who have been campaigning against this exploitative business for years. We hope that this award will not only encourage the team behind this film, but also strengthen the resolve of the women fighting against sexual violence. The winner of the CIR Open-Source Film Awards 2024 in the mid-form category is Catching a Pervert, Sexual Assault for Sale by BBC Investigations.
First of all, thank you so much for this. We're very grateful, and I mean, I'm shaking. But I just want to say that this goes obviously to the team, to who did the whole work, but also to the contributors who trusted us, trusted the team who trusted the team to tell their stories. And this is for them.
Yeah, and I guess, just the team in question, Alyom and Moose and Xiaoyan, you heard her voice narrating, and Shan, the director who initially pitched this project. I wish they could be here, but yeah, thank you to them as well. They did an incredible job. Huge, huge, huge team. The translators, there's so many people, honestly, we can never thank them all, but yes, a million. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. And let's move on to our final category, which is the long-form category.
Some were the first to arrive on the scene, Others were specifically called upon to intervene. All remain on the force. The investigation examines the role each of these officers played in the deadly delay, through the review of post-action interviews and dozens of hours of body camera footage. We interviewed law enforcement experts, read multiple active shooter training policies, and obtained exclusive licensing and training records. The minute-by-minute account shows how these officers violated decades-old police protocols to immediately stop an active shooter.
Olenivka became the site of the massacre of Ukrainian prisoners of war.
Він проводить променем цього ліхтарика в цю дорогу, і я просто бачу, що це отак от до кінця того, як світить той ліхтарик, просто все усіяне тілами, розумієте?
Step by step, we collected information on how the prison operated and its guards, administrators, and supervisors from Russia. Our team recorded dozens of interviews with people who returned from captivity and witnessed gross violations of international humanitarian law.
But online, there's a trail of evidence. Piecing together online testimonies, death records, and battle footage, we found that the 155 did suffer heavy losses in Volodar. We found reasons why these men died.
Such kind of breaching operations are suicide.
And we found out what happened to those caught up in a battle.
Okay, colleagues from the Washington Post. All good. Oh yeah. I probably should have done that before.
Thanks. Sorry. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. I'm here on behalf of my colleagues Sarah Kalin and Urbella Hernandez, and of course Imogen Piper, who were all an instrumental part of reporting out this story. So the story is on May 24th, 2022, when a gunman entered Uvalde Elementary School and killed 19 children and 2 teachers. I still remember that first week of reporting and the horror I felt when we began to piece together just how long the shooter was inside the classroom for. Sorry, I'm very nervous about public speaking. So I teamed up with Sarah and Aurelis, and this piece is a culmination of a year reporting, looking at the critical moments of indecision and identifying the 7 officers who were in positions to take action and failed to do so. Well, many of our new findings I wanted to acknowledge came from Aurelis, our longstanding immigration reporter who was able to obtain exclusive body camera materials from the officers who were there, and this allowed us to build an extraordinarily detailed timeline of events. And following on that, my colleagues and I filed countless public records requests to try and understand the status of these officers and whether they were still employed. And our piece identified these 7 officers who were in positions to act, failed to do so. We identified that of all these 7, they were all still employed, and their inactions led to deadly consequences. So I'm very grateful to be here tonight, and thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. And colleagues from Kyiv Independent.
Hi, my name is Evgenia Motorevska, and I'm leading the War Crimes Investigation Unit at the Kyiv Independent. We launched this new department in March 2023, 1 year ago. And today I present our 3rd documentary about mistreatment and torture and one of the most infamous POW camps, Olenivka, which located in the occupied territory of Ukraine. And when we were working on this investigation, of course, we used different sources of information, including internal documents, which we were able to obtain from our sources, testimonies of victims and witnesses, videos and photos from Russian propaganda media, and of course videos and photos from social media accounts of camp staff. When we're talking about open sources information, of course we had some problem with identifying people from photos and videos from Russian propaganda media, because some of this footage had bad quality and tricky camera angles. But of course, I guess that the most significant challenge for us was the security of our journalists, because all our team is based in Kiev, and we are conducting our investigation during the ongoing war. And for instance, just in May, when we actively working on our documentary, I mean in 2023, there were 17 drone and missile attacks on Kiev. In July of last year, Russian drone hit the residential building of our director. Fortunately, he was safe, but of course there was very stressful experience for him and for me too. And other significant challenge for us was the safety of our sources in the occupied territory and safety of our subjects of our documentary. And for instance, when we are working on this topic, we expose that local staff from local guards from the camp killed Ukrainian military during so-called priyomka. There was admission process in the camp, but when we decided to reach out to his relatives, it turned out that his mother continued to live in the occupied territory, and publication and information about her son could harm her, because we have known some cases when Russian soldiers kidnapped and tortured relatives and friends of Ukrainian soldiers. We had some discussion in our team, and after that we decided that we not to include this piece in our investigation. That's it from me. If you would like to connect us, please push me or a member of our teams, and all our documentary you can find on our YouTube channel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And finally, BBCI.
Hi, thanks CIR for inviting us here. Honoured to be in such a esteemed company. One of the great strengths of all of these open source films is that they allow you to present primary visual evidence to audiences who are increasingly distrustful of traditional media. And nowhere is that more true than when you're trying to present the harms of the invasion of Ukraine to a Russian audience. So what we wanted to do with this film was take second-hand sources like Russian soldiers claiming that they were being treated like meat, and put that against the word of officials who were claiming that the commanders were competent and minimizing losses. So what we were able to do here was look at sort of the hundreds of videos that were coming out of this specific battle in Volodar and present that primary visual evidence to audiences to show them what was really happening and cut through those two narratives. And we were also really lucky to have the huge body of work by Olga Ivshina, who has been collecting the names of dead Russian soldiers since the first day of the war, using exclusively open source information, which really helped to show the rates of the deaths.
So starting with the data that Olga shared with us, we went ahead to verify and to add to it. which meant a rigorous process of going through tons and tons of very local, small Telegram channels, websites of local schools, because in Russia, they often dedicate a school desk to a dead soldier that used to be a student in that school. After doing all that, we also realized that given the sensitivity of the topic and the issue that if we talk to people in Russia, which we of course did, but we couldn't really publish much of it because they face criminal charges for disclosing any information about military, which is considered like defamation of Russian military. So we realized our main human element have to come from open source as well. And that's how we found our main character, whose name is Rama, as you can see him here. We've been able to find and tell basically his whole life story, exclusively relying on his social media page, on the social media page of his mom, some local newspapers, and abandoned TikTok account, all this kind of things. And I think we really succeeded in that because from many people I heard the feedback that, oh wait, you actually didn't talk to the family? We were sure that it came from the family, like because there were videos of him being 5 years old at like a grandparent's house. So that's for the investigation part, and just wanted to add a little thing that I think it was really a major win for us is that during the first month we got 2 million views combined, around that number. But then in a month's time we got a sudden huge boost, which we didn't realize at first where it's coming from. We got another 1 million views in like within Russia. And then one person from our team checked the YouTube stats, and turned out that YouTube algorithm started suggesting the video, our film, to people who watched Russian propaganda footage about Avdiivka. So this was exactly the audience we wanted to reach, but that were very unlikely to watch our film, just seeing the BBC title in it. But then there's like around 1 million of those who watched. So I think that was the major success of delivering it to the audience that needs to see it actually.
Thank you so much. And could I introduce Lindsay to announce the winner?
All right. I'm very excited to be here to announce the long-form winner this year from a stunning array of entries. This year's winner showed formidable reporting in the public interest. This is a piece of prime documentary investigation, masterfully balancing open source reporting with superlative storytelling. Focused on an event that was begging for investigation, the team built a detailed timeline, and using geolocation immersed the viewer alongside a group of personnel that day, giving identity to each and every one of them, and critically showing who was saying what. Doggedly pursuing accountability, the team committed themselves to meticulously sifting through hours of open source materials, publicly released footage, audio from dispatch communications, law enforcement documents, and public record requests, and combined it with traditional reporting, body cam footage, and interviews, exhaustively showing us what happened that day. The team overcame the challenge of having to rely on materials that were visually confusing and repetitive, and skillfully guiding the audience through every moment and every piece of evidence without losing sight of the bigger picture. Every minute of this film was agonizing to watch, and at the heart of the film are families who had been promised answers, but who have been left without explanation. The winner of the CIR Open-Source Film Awards 2024 in the long-form category is A Year After Uvalde, Officers Who Botched Response Faced Few Consequences, The Washington Post.
Present it to the winner. Do you want to say anything?
No, thank you. I'm sorry that I'm such a mess, and I wish the rest of my team was here, but thank you. This means so much. I really appreciate it.
Amazing. Well done. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. And I think we've got one last special surprise. Suze?
First of all, I want to say, like, it's agonizing to even be here and see people win, because for me, all of you are winners, even if he says that it's not, like, you can't all be winners, but to me, you really are. And even the ones on the long list, because I think for us, I guess the internal CIR team, it was really, really hard to kind of do some of the shifting through all of these amazing investigations, and it was kind of such a testament to the community and where investigative journalism within open source is going. And just for that reason also, we are going to publish a long list, so not just the short list, but also a long list of everybody that kind of submitted and that we felt deserved that recognition as well, even just as a resource. Because as a filmmaker myself, I love to go and just dive into a whole bunch of films, and to have from now onwards, hopefully, a place where every year you can go and kind of delve into the films from that year from across all of these different investigations is what we want to do, and how we also want to kind of support the community. So to me, everybody's a winner. And based on that kind of feeling that we had, there was, we felt the need, after initially announcing that there was going to be 3 categories, we felt there was a need for a special recognition category from the 3 of us, actually, where there will always be, I think, investigations, especially some that may not have the resources of an entire news organization behind them, who also submitted and who can't always, like, there's I think we anticipated every year there's going to be something like that we feel also needs to be rewarded. So this year, we would like to use this opportunity for the Special Recognition Award to commend the Air Wars film, the 6-year-old victim of Britain's war in Iraq. The open source investigative work here was rigorous, incredibly detailed, and time-consuming. The investigative effort started with a Freedom of Information requests with UK Ministry of Defence, matched with Air Wars' own open source archive, as well as declassified documents from the US military to identify incidents where British weapons were possibly linked to civilian harm in Iraq and Syria. The team rounded the circle by traveling to Mosul and speaking to victims of these airstrikes. The specific case study of 6-year-old Taiba and her family became representative of a much wider questions of transparency and accountability for civilian harm during conflict and war. The jury was particularly impressed with how the investigation managed to bring to life a human story entirely hidden in documents, and how the team was able to reconstruct the event in a visual way without any direct video evidence to start with. So congratulations. We'd like to invite the Air Wars team.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name's Nathan, and you'll notice that my name is not on the screen because all the credit for this award belongs to my team and my predecessor, especially as visual lead, Julia. As mentioned, we're a very small team, and I'm super proud of everyone for kind of like getting this work done. We focus on civilian casualties caused by explosive munitions, and I think like a lot of people in this room, it's like the type of work that we wish we didn't have to do, but we do because it's so important. And yeah, really grateful to have that recognized, so thank you.
Thank you so much. So that's the end. That's the end of the first ever Open Source Film Awards, which is exciting. Huge thank you. Huge thank you to our wonderful jury. The scores were incredibly tight, I think, in all 3 categories. So thank you for the jury for their help. Thank you so much as well to the Journalism Festival and for hosting us. You guys are amazing. Thank you to the tech team for all your patience and brilliance. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming. Please do come along to La Rosetta for some drinks. And could I ask can I ask the finalists to stay for a quick photo? Where's the photo taking place, guys? Just here. But thank you so much for coming. Hopefully see you all later on. Thank you.